I, Raymond Knopf,
Facer,
Do swear or affirm
do swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Idaho,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Idaho,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of trustee
of the office of trustee
of the Pocatello School District 25
of the Pocatello Chubbuck School District 25
in Bannock County, state of Idaho,
in Bannock County, state of Idaho,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Okay, now I start, right? Okay, I call this meeting to order and would welcome those who are joining us in person and by live stream. Thank you for being here. All the board members are present, and the purpose of the work meeting is to receive operational reports from the administration. We will begin with the K-12 academic update provided by A.J. Watson and Amy Boy.
Good afternoon, board. It's good to be here with you today. We wanted to just give you, I don't know that it's quite mid-year yet, but close enough. After the winter break, it kind of seems like it's mid-year. So we wanted to give you an update. I know we've talked in the past. We give you a lot of data and information at the end of the year and in the summer from the year, but we wanted to give you a quick update as to what we have currently. So I'll be sharing some information in regards to elementary data and specifically reading, and then Amy will take care of the secondary data, and then we can answer any questions that you might have from there. Okay, so for elementary, like I said, if you go to, I'm not sure what order it's in, but mine might be first. It's iStation, ISIP reading is what you want to be looking at. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of context in terms of, there's a bunch of numbers there, but a little context so you know what those numbers are in reference to. So the iStation, it's the reading ISIP. This is actually the state's IRI. The state requires it in the fall and in the spring of each year. We also, as a district, have decided that we are going to take it monthly. And we also use it in our K-3 classrooms, not only in our younger grades for instruction, but we also use it as an intervention piece as well. So we track the monthly data to determine growth and progress. So the information that you're looking at is from that monthly data from the start of this school moving through December where we have our current data. Just a few things to understand about the reading ISIP. It is used not only by us but nationally as well, so it is a nationally normed assessment. The assessment consists of assigned subtests. So the tests based on grade level are different. So for example, in kindergarten, the subtests include listening comprehension, phonemic awareness, letter knowledge, and vocabulary, whereas in 5th grade, it's word analysis, text fluency, vocabulary, and reading comprehension. And there's also a computer adaptive test. So based on how the student or the learner answers, the question will get easier or harder. And so they can individually identify where they're at as far as a reading level. They call it an ability index, and then they can determine growth and progress as well for each learner. And we also look at it by school and also by district. So I'm going to share some of the district data with you right now for our kindergarten through 5th grade learners. As you can see, that first column there, as you're looking at, it's a monthly breakdown by grade level. The first column is what we call kind of our baseline. That's where they started at to begin the year in each grade level. And then through December of 23, that's where we're at. If you see the green at the end, that's showing the growth. So from September to December, you can see the growth. And this is proficiency. So those students that score a 3, 4, or 5 are considered proficient. They score a 1 or 2, they're considered below proficient. So these are proficiency percentages. And the growth, as you can see, starting in kindergarten, we always see huge growth. And kindergarten's awesome because we always get to see a lot of growth in kindergarten. For a lot of them, their first real educational opportunity and focus specifically on reading. So as you can see, going from 14% all the way down through 5th grade, 5% growth. And then I also like to compare, because of the IRI, we take a look at the K-3 district-wide, where we're at compared to kindergarten through 3rd grade in the state. So we can make some comparisons based on the same standards, the same things that they're learning at other schools within the state. As you can see, those comparisons are shown there as well in that spreadsheet.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
I think you went really fast. So when you say this is the proficient, this is those that are at the 3?
3, 4, or 5.
3,
So there's
4,
different levels of proficiency. It goes from, they fall in the range from 1 to 5, and those that are a 3, 4, or 5 are considered proficient for their grade level at that time of that month or
So
whenever
I
they're
assume you
taking that
then look at
assessment.
numbers of those that have moved from 1 to.
Correct. Those that are still making growth and progressing, and so the schools take a look at this data. We use it, we show, in terms of proficiency, but the schools use this a lot as they're determining interventions and what they need to do if individual learners are making growth, even though they may be at a 1 or a 2, if they're still making growth and making progress towards becoming proficient. So they can use that data as well.
Quick question I
Yes.
have then is, so you're saying you're doing these tests every month?
So,
Is
yes.
there test exhaustion going on?
So that's part of the program. So as soon as they log in that first, whatever day it is, the first day they log in of that month, it automatically tests them for a couple of reasons. One, because it wants the data in to show progress, because it is a progress assessment, but also then it can determine what they need in terms of a path or what they need in terms of their subtests for instruction for that month, maybe areas that they're struggling in or areas that they need some more practice in. So it goes in and automatically tests them. So you can't go in and not take the assessment. If you log in, you're going to be assessed for that month. That's how the program works with iStation. Good question.
I
Yes,
just
Deanna.
wondered on the district proficiency growth, does that include the 1 to 2,
No,
2 to 3?
no.
'Cause it's
So this is
proficiency
just
growth
those that, yes,
only
those that are 3, 4s,
that-
and
That
5s.
meet the 3.
Correct, that meet that proficiency.
Thank you.
Yes, good question.
Any explanation for the 3rd grade? I mean, I'm a number.
No, it's a good question as we look at those, and sometimes as we go in and look even at individual schools, and there's kind of, sometimes it's up and down a little bit depending on the month. January is typically a month where we'll see a little bit of a drop, honestly, because they've been out of school for a little while and they come back after 2 or 3 weeks off and not having done a whole lot of academic learning, that we will see a drop. But sometimes in certain grade levels, we don't know why, we'll just see a drop in their scores, and so we keep a close eye on them. And also we have. I know Amy. She's sitting here. She wants to jump in, so I'll give her. You can tell. This stuff she loves.
Oh.
We do have a new curriculum as well, as you're aware, and our K2 has started using structured literacy as part of that. And our 3, 4, 5, it's a very different curriculum from what we've been using in the past, and so sometimes you will see a little bit of a decrease. We haven't, as you can see. I wanted to compare that next one down. Kind of brings me to that point as you look at where were we at in December of 2022 compared to currently, and showing in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, we're all above where we were at last year in terms of proficiency. 4th and 5th grade are down a little bit. And it could be because of curriculum, some of the changes. It could be the year, but we keep an eye on it. I mean, it's kind of within a range, and some months that may be a little bit above, and some months it may be a little bit below. But it's nice for us to monitor that progress and see if some of those curriculum changes are making a difference, or if there's some things that we definitely need to take a look at and
But really,
look
even
at
on
differently.
that bottom, you should be looking diagonal, correct? If you're wanting to track these.
If you wanted to
kids.
track by grade level, correct. So
Right,
for
the
last
3rd
year's
grade.
kindergartners would be this year's 1st graders, correct? As you were looking at that also, you could make
So
some.
we're in December
Mhm.
at the proficiency level of the very end of the year of last year, it looks to me like, just about. Not in every single grade level, but a lot of them.
So
What
now,
I'm seeing, 70, 67, 67, 65, 65.
based on.
Oh, that's,
I don't have
both are
anything.
December. Both are
Correct,
December.
yes.
I
So
got
so
it.
I'm just making a December
got
to
it.
December comparison, yeah.
I got
So when
it.
you're asking me that, I was looking like, I don't have end of the year or anything on here, do I? I just went from
No,
the
you're
start of
right.
this year so we could compare
You're-
to
yeah,
last
you're right,
year.
yeah.
Knowing that we've changed curriculum and some things, maybe a little bit, we know things are different as far as instruction in the classroom.
And isn't 3rd grade the great equalizer?
3rd grade.
The geniuses are suddenly not the geniuses anymore.
3rd grade's an interesting, it really is. I noticed in my experience that once they were at 3rd grade, it's a lot more challenging for them to make growth and proficiency, that we don't see as much movement as we do from K through 2. Once they hit that 3rd grade, it's kind of that pivotal, like they're there or they're not, and we do everything we can, but we
And
don't see
some
as
that
many
were
of them.
struggling are
Yep.
suddenly
Yeah,
just fine.
and they score proficient.
I think that's interesting.
And then we also want to take a look at, and actually Superintendent Howell is the one who said, hey, let's take a look at what the difference is in kindergarten compared to part day versus full day. So I went back to December of 2021 when we were part day kindergarten last time, and then compared it to now. And 10% difference in terms of what it was for those that were just part day proficient versus now where we're at proficiency with our kindergarten learners.
And you know what, I would like to see too is what the difference in third grade is from 2021 to now, when you've had kindergarten, you know, the extended day, because that's when a lot of those gains kind of equalize.
Okay.
So anyway,
Yeah, I can.
That'd be
I'll
interesting to
pull
track.
that and just send it out in an email so that
yeah.
we'll see what that is. And now Amy, I know Amy has a few.
I
things
just
she
have
wants to
one
say.
thing to say about, but you got to it. I was really impressed that you got to it. You have to remember what you're looking at. You're looking at proficiency data. You're looking at the number of students proficient. So you're not really looking at growth. Those are two different things, right?
Yes.
You're not looking at individual student growth. You're looking at number of students proficient. So you pointed out third grade and you said, well, they didn't grow as much, right? There's only 3% growth, but look where they started. In September, they were already at 64 out of every 100 students in our district were already testing proficient in September. So if you look at December, okay, so the 3% isn't as high as the other percents, but they're 67% proficient, which is right up there with everybody else. I mean, minus kindergarten is 70% proficient now, but first grade, so it's really, you've got to remember when you're looking at data, you've got to stay grounded and remember when you're looking at proficiency data versus individual growth. So, but you got to it. That's why I was so excited. I was just excited that we were making that connection. Okay.
Can I give one more
Yes,
thing,
of
just follow up to this? So I don't know if you've heard or not, but the state is in the process of looking at the IRI assessment. And they've sent out a request for proposal, and they're getting survey groups and teams together to consider if they're going to continue to use the iStation ISIP for IRI. Obviously, this year they are, but there could be a change, which if there is a change, and I don't know what's going to happen, it could be iStation and the ISIP, or it could be something different, but that could completely change our baseline moving forward, and so then we would have to adjust and start all over. So we'll see what ends up happening as part of that process, and like I said, they're putting committees and groups together right now. They've sent information out to districts to get volunteers and those who want to be on those committees, so we'll keep you informed as to what happens and where the state goes with their request for proposal for the IRI.
Yeah. I'm glad that they're continuing to make the, change testing based on structured literacy.
Right.
Because
Some of
ISIP
those
doesn't
components.
really track structured literacy the same way another test will.
So I'm sure they'll be looking closely at that.
Yay.
Okay, any other questions I can answer before I turn it over to Amy?
Okay, and just so you know, we have several administrators, teachers, Kathy, our curriculum coordinator, Raina, our federal programs director, they've applied to be a part of that process. So we should have some representation there as they look at the IRI. Okay, so we've made it a priority, as AJ said, this year to update the board periodically on academic progress. You remember we started the year with continuous improvement plan in which we provided information on our literacy program, college and career advising program, student achievement and growth metrics reported to the state board. We started that. We analyzed current grad rates, ISAT data, and IRI data, and set new performance targets. That was at the beginning in September. It seems like forever ago. As we find ways to update the board on progress throughout the year, it's important to note differences in our ability to provide progress monitoring data for elementary and secondary. They're two different beasts. All elementary students are assessed monthly on iStation, like AJ talked about. Therefore, we have access to district-level IRI data, and we can see the proficiency growth. Secondary is much different in terms of progress monitoring. So much of the testing, and you asked about test exhaustion, which, again, I appreciate. So much of the testing for secondary, SAT, AP, ISAT, all of that takes place in the spring. And as you know, a lot of that's taking place in the high school at 11th grade, if you want to talk about test exhaustion. The results are released in the early to mid-summer, and we analyze the data at the building level and the department level in the fall. So keeping the board posted and informed on progress throughout the year for secondary poses kind of a unique challenge. So there are a few items we thought would be of interest to you, however, at this time. First, we do have data from our PSAT that was administered on October 18th, and that's the first thing you have for secondary. This was the first time the exam was administered online versus pen and paper. So there was a learning curve nationwide. Kathy Luris, Trina McLaughlin, and building test coordinators did a great job navigating these changes. It ran very smoothly. You have the data in your packet. When comparing 22, let's look at the data. So when you're comparing from 2022 to 2023, it's important to note and to remember that there's a difference in the way the test was administered, which could have had an impact on the scores. So if you look at the PSAT in 2022, we're looking at the percent of test takers who met both benchmarks, and both benchmarks are the math benchmark and the evidence-based reading and writing benchmark, okay? So in 2022, 38% of those tested in our district, that's that blue line, that first blue line, 38% of our students met both benchmarks. The red is the state, 32% of the state met both, and 33 nationwide, total group, okay? So then if you look at this year, we have this year's data, which we thought was timely. So we went down a little bit, 34% this year met both benchmarks, but the state was 30 and the nation stayed at 33, so we were still above both. Then if you look at it, those who just met the evidence-based reading and writing, last year we were 60%, this year we're 58%, whereas the state stayed relatively the same, 56 to 57, and so, you know, those numbers are, you know, kind of sixes. Then if you go to the math benchmark, 43% of our learners last year met the math benchmark, whereas 37, we were above the state and the total group at 37%. This year, 38% of our students met the math benchmark versus 33 for the state and 36 for the total group. Here's a couple of important things to note about this. While it's not a state-required test, it is paid for by the state, and our district administered it to all 10th graders. And then each school, there are some 11th graders that want to take it for different reasons in preparation for the SAT and various reasons. This data is just for the 10th grade cohort because it's easier to compile and compare that data when you're keeping it consistent from school to school versus this school had a lot of 11th graders. So this is 10th grade cohort data. Any questions on the PSAT?
I've got two questions.
Okay.
They're probably, my brain is cycling a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say we've administered this to everybody, and I always questioned that a little bit as to why we asked because clearly some of this data, you're gonna get kids who had no intentions of ever taking this, and let's just go draw some bubble designs on my test sheet. I mean, how do you throw out those kind of outliers? And then my next question is, when you look at this, what are you extrapolating from this? Obviously, math is where and so what decisions do you then make from this moving forward? I mean, what happens now with this data?
Those are really good questions. The schools look at it on a school level, and it doesn't give them specific feedback like the ISAT does on here's where your weaknesses are, but they look at the school level and see if they're on target. Like if all of a sudden like one of our schools was way below proficiency compared to another school, then we would know we needed to look at some things in math. To be honest with you, we start our conversations here in math, and I'm going to get to that in my presentations at the secondary level. We start our analysis here, and then we really quickly get to course level data and classroom level data, where those teachers and departments are setting very specific goals based on needs they see with those learners, and then they're measuring growth in the course, which is why it's hard. There's not this IRI, ISIP that measures every student the same as they go, because this kid's in AP Calc and this kid's in Integrated 1, and this is the needs, and I'm going to set these goals, and I'm going to give my own assessments as a teacher and watch their growth, and I'm going to measure that, and I'm going to report that to my principal, right, in my evaluation. And that's the kind of that's the kind of data analysis that really matters. This is up here, and we look at it, but we really get down to the granular level in the building and the department and the classroom, and that's where decisions are made.
One more thing is that I think, if I remember right, they did not used to make everybody take it, and so then it incorrectly skewed the data because it was only kids who were thinking of going on, and so it looked like Idaho was performing so well nationwide, and that wasn't a true read.
Well, it's really
Because it needs
difficult
to-
if one
it needs
school
to be
has everybody
everyone.
take it and another school has the kids take it who want to take it, then you're comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah, and I think used to be that it was choice.
Right.
Like,
What was-
everybody.
Why was that decision to make everybody take it? I'm just curious, that's from the state?
That was on the state
wasn't
level.
it?
It's not, it's not required right now. Why was the decision made in our
Yeah,
district?
well, or even from the state,
Oh, I
guess.
thought it was the state that required for graduation.
It's not required.
But SAT or?
SAT
Oh,
was,
the SAT.
SAT
Yeah,
was,
yes.
but it's not. It's not now.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, if you, that's a really big discussion on, you know, what those tests are being used for and why they're effective, and the universities are starting to not require them. So that's a really broad discussion on assessment and accountability. But where we're at now is that the state is not requiring it, and but we are required to offer it, give kids an option to take it. That's where we're at. But most of our 10th graders took it. Okay, so then second we have preliminary. Hey, this is important. Did I miss anything, Kathy? Okay, she's the expert on all things assessment. Okay, so second we have preliminary four-year graduation rates for the 2023 cohort. They're so preliminary, they're not final. I repeat, they are not final. They're so preliminary that they're a little higher today than they were on Friday when we gave you. So there's 7, to be exact, there's 7 appeals that have gone through. So we can look at this really quickly. So for our district in 2022, if you look at the lower, make sure I'm looking at the right one. Okay, so what you're looking at is at the 2022, down at the bottom, you can see our district graduation rate was 89.6. And then if you go up top, under 2023, you can see it's 89.4. Well, that was Friday. Today, last time we checked, we're up to 90% graduation rate. So we're up a little bit higher than we were last year. And so we're right on track. The state goal is 94.9%, but you can see we're above the state. Last year, the state was only 79.9. One of the things I've learned about this graduation rate that might just be interesting to note is there are people like Kathy Luris and registrars who, once we get our initial graduation rate, they start going student by student by student to say, what happened to this kid? This kid's counting against us in our graduation rate. Is it just a clerical problem, right? Did they go off to another school and we never received confirmation that they ended up at that school? So it looks they're counting against our grad rate. That's what those appeals are. So there's this huge process that goes student by student by student to make sure. But this gives us a pretty good idea of what our grad rate is, and we're right up where we need to be with the state. And I think it's something important that we continue to look at. Okay. Last thing, I think it's important to note that progress is being monitored. I can skip this part because I explained to you how progress is monitored at the secondary level much differently than it is. It's at a classroom and department level. One positive note that might be nice to end on is that our district was selected by the Idaho Department of Education to be part of a statewide focus group for middle school math because our proficiency data and growth data was above that in other parts of the state, which was interesting for us because we felt like we really want to improve those math scores in middle school, right? So we're like, wait a minute, we're in the top 6 or 7 schools in the district to come together and share our ideas. Well, the purpose of this focus group is to share what's working well in the district with other districts. We can we've talked a lot about what we can contribute our success to in this focus group, and here's what we've landed on. We've landed the fact that we're using a combination of a strong core curriculum in the middle school grades, effective instructional strategies that really focus on differentiation and meeting learners where they are. We use the iReady program, which is a diagnostic and intervention tool, and we also just started this year using Imagine Math, which was purchased by the state for all learners, and it's not an intervention, it targets differentiation though, for even those kids who need enrichment, and so this is the first year we've started using that. We're kind of excited to see where that will lead us. Having participated in this focus group, I would say that the single most, this is a bold statement. I even asked Kathy if I should say it. I'm like, should I be this bold? Do I really think this is what it is? But I think I do. Having participated in this post, I feel like the single most important contributing factor to our success is our focus on ongoing collaboration, which comes through unit development, PLCs, instructional camps, and professional development. I think that's why we continue to show growth, because we're not working in isolation. We're working together as we problem solve, and we are problem solving. Our math scores aren't where we want them to be, but we're collaborating as we're trying things, and we're looking at data, and we're checking results. So I just want you to know there are many amazing collaborative efforts going on through the district. Any other questions for us? Okay. Thanks, AJ.
Thank you.
Okay, well, next we have Amy again, to talk
Saying.
about the fifth grade social studies textbook adoption overview.
So in your packet, you have a memo for the fifth grade social studies adoption. And I think it's important to understand about fifth grade social studies adoption that we had a very specific set of needs. You remember, I was sick before Christmas, and AJ presented the fourth grade, updating the fourth grade materials. We use Idaho Adventure, and so we updated those just to make sure our textbook aligned with our online platform. Well, so for fifth grade, they don't have, they need an updated resource. So we have a very specific need, and here's what the need is. There's not a lot of instructional time set aside each week in fifth grade for social studies instruction, right? We're talking an hour to two a week for social studies instruction. So what we didn't want was this huge comprehensive resource that teachers were trying to, spending more time planning, like trying to sort through all the materials and find, how do I find a succinct lesson that will meet the state standards? So we had a very specific need, which makes this kind of a little bit different. And so we've talked to other districts. We're looking at what other people are using that have similar instructional minutes as we do in our state. And really it came down to two main publishers. We have Our Nation Studies Weekly and Coeur d'Alene's using that in some other districts, and then My World Interactive Activity Pack. So it's not their whole comprehensive, Savas Learning's whole comprehensive package, but their activity pack, and West Ada and some other districts are using that. So those are the two materials we'd like to review. We had a third, but when we told them our needs, they just said, oh, we're way too comprehensive for an hour or two. So they almost just sort of withdrew. So we said, okay, we've narrowed it down to two. Here's our timeline. January 10th, the Infinite Campus message, and we just followed the member selection protocol that you established, that the board established last year. So Infinite Campus message will be sent to appropriate parent groups per member selection protocol. On the 17th, so it gives them a week. Principals will send those names to our department, and then that's when we'll send out that Google application that just asks them sort of 5 questions that you all had the chance to look at last year. And then from February 3rd to February 12th, board members will have time to review those applications. And then at the February board meeting, each board member will select 1 committee member and 1 alternate. And then February 19th through 23rd, we'll have the publisher presentations to the advisory team and the adoption committee. And February 19th through March 8th, the advisory team and adoption committee meetings will meet and review the materials. And then at the March board meeting, the adoption committee would present their recommendation to the board. So that's the timeline that we'd like to follow. Any questions about that? Okay, super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the MSP land exchange update provided by Jonathan Balls.
Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Just wanted to give you a little update on where we're at, and again, maybe just a little bit of history that I've even dug up or found some information, some records about this property. Again, we're discussing this, the 24 acres There on Jerome and Olympus on that corner. The school district purchased it in '77, and or I believe it was actually $75,000 back in that day. Shortly thereafter, the school district also purchased the property on Hiskey, and then about 2 years after that, they built Gate City Elementary, and that's kind of how those two pieces of property came about there. And so again, we've had that in our possession since that time, appreciating in value and so forth, until recently, again, as the existing board members know, and for Trustee Knopf there, that we had the opportunity to look at that land across from Highland, and previous school boards, as we've discussed, previous school boards had the opportunity to buy that, and decided not to, whether that, and I can't speak for that, whether that be the cost, the cash, or just the focus was on, we know the focus really was on the CTE building as well. But in recent months, we've saw that we could use that land across, for at least land gives us options for that Highland High School property that is landlocked. So again, the MSP is Mount State's property, and that's a developer there that we had been talking to, keeping neighborly contacts with, and but then things got serious over the summer and in the fall. And again, as a reminder, on September 19th, 22nd, 21st, we signed a letter of agreement to start this process, to kind of evaluate that. And that was done through with legal counsel and so forth. The first step was to actually subdivide our property so that a land swap could take place. And that's kind of in the process that we are still going through currently. So we hired a civil engineer to do that subdivision and survey it and so forth. When it was first went back to the city, they had asked us actually to both design and develop the road to the north, which is Venture Way, if I remember correctly. And so we said, no, we're not developing this. We just are dividing it so we could provide this swap. And they understood that, but they still asked that we have a design for that, and that they will actually put that on our plat that it's called a developer's agreement, that whoever takes and develops that land, they will develop Venture Way as well.
So
to the
right now
north.
Venture Way hits Jerome, and then they're saying to continue Venture Way?
Correct. So
across
it's
property?
the Chubbuck Road and
Chubbuck
Chubbuck
Road.
Road.
So in
The
Pocatello,
east-west.
they don't really want to call Chubbuck Road Chubbuck in Pocatello, is my, my guess, my best guess.
Yep.
Yeah, and so Venture Way will just pick up at Olympus.
Okay.
And how far up did they want that?
So MSP, Mount State's property, they will pay for that design on the 9 acres, 9.9 acres. We did go ahead and decide, so the board could have flexibility, that we would pay for the design. It came out to be, I believe, $6,000 or $7,000 to design the rest of it. So that way, whatever we do with the remaining portion of that land, we'll have that requirement done. And so, but then there will still be that stipulation, if that ever gets developed, that developer would take and do Adventure Way. So all that was put into what they call a short plat. And just by way of reference, again, it was just literally a quick decision. We had to call that something, this little subdivision. So we called it Olympus Junction. Don't know if it's a good name or not. Again, so that's, if you see that. Again, so we've went with the city a couple times. I think I even reported, okay, we thought we were, and with a short plat, it goes straight to the city council. And so we thought that was gonna happen the end of December, but kind of through some of these negotiations. But I do have here the letter from the planning, and it is scheduled for the city council on January 18th. So myself and the engineer will be there. We don't anticipate there'll be any questions from the council, but we will do that. And that time, they will either approve or deny the short plat. And then it will actually be ratified, I believe it's February 1st, that first Thursday of February, but that'll be kind of just in the consent agenda. Or the real decision will be on that January 18th. And then that will put things legally in place that we can get a exchange agreement. Thank you. I was going to say swap, but that wasn't right. Exchange agreement in place, and that will be brought to the board, and that will be kind of another step of the formal document that will start the kind of some more due diligence and so forth that will put in place the closing date, closing times, and so forth. So that's where we're at with this land exchange.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're still up next.
I am still up next.
The
Move my papers over.
Design West Facilities Observation Report.
Okay. Again, we're going back to the summertime. If you remember, as we had several different options that the board were discussing, one was to have a facility observation report. And when we talked whether it be district-wide, which would be very expensive, or we kind of limited it into some of our key buildings in this corridor that we were kind of looking at. And that is in front of you, so you can see the date was early August, but then as the board kind of narrowed the focus there, we thought, okay, we'll hold this to see, and present it at a more natural time. But this is kind of where we wanted to do that. And this document, put together by Design West Architects, as well as some local engineering, mechanical, electrical, and structural engineers. And you can see their individual reports there. Again, we looked at Washington Elementary, Tendoy Elementary, Idaho Elementary, and Highland High School. It's there in front of you, and if you'd like to, some of the kind of the major points I thought, that for me, over the maintenance department, again, I appreciated that they commented that our facilities were very well cared for and maintained, with the infrastructure that was given there. Obviously, these are 60-plus-year-old buildings, and so there were things such as ADA compliant, that are just, when you design stairs to get up into Washington, it's hard to make that ADA compliant. For the exterior access, and then also in the bathrooms, that they're just confined space with those. Again, there's things we could look at and do, but you can see as they go through there talking about different spaces, from cafeteria to the to gymnasiums. Really try to focus on learner education and so forth. Obviously, these are we read a couple statements of natural lighting and so forth that these older buildings built in the 60s and earlier, did not have. But overall, I feel good about this report, that they are in good condition with the amount of the constraints that were originally put on them as they were built.
I appreciate, our maintenance department is, I would say, the best, that I can't even imagine them doing a better job. But one thing is on Washington, Tendoy, and Idaho, the
Yeah.
statement was made that, let me get to it.
Sure.
Despite the age of the building, it is well cared for and obviously benefited over the years from a staff that takes pride in the school and takes quality care in maintaining it.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that on all the schools except Highland. That statement was not made on Highland. I would like to say that because I agree with that.
Okay.
That it is not the same, and it doesn't have that statement, but it is that same statement on the other three.
Okay.
but it's not there on Highland.
And, okay, and I could even ask to see if that was purposefully left off. I myself would make that same statement.
Well, in place of that, it talked about how, a lot of things, inadequate,
Sure.
need to be improved,
So-
lots of things.
Yeah.
But lots of inadequacies. And that statement wasn't there. Anything like that. Nothing like that was there.
The only, again, I could ask them specifically about that statement. Again, if you even look at the date of the report there, again, that was right as we were trying to, finish school, the construction, the cleaning was all there as
Oh,
well.
yeah,
so
it
they
doesn't
couldn't-
talght about any of the cleaning. Yeah, it's not
Sure,
any of the cleaning.
what I was
It's
saying is
talking
that-
about structures, fixtures, things like that. It didn't talk about, I didn't see anything about cleaning.
Sure, and I understand that, but it's just the well cared for. I guess they might not have been able to see that because of just the big
It
cleaning
is
project
hard
from
to
the
see.
fire.
It is hard to see that.
Yeah, especially at this time, trying to get ready for school. But
Yes,
sure,
I
I don't want to make excuses for them, and obviously you can read the report and take it as face value. Appreciate that observation.
Yes, just wanted to make sure that,
You bet.
that if everybody doesn't read the whole report, they understand that part of it.
I don't know if this was an oversight, but in the report of Washington from the engineers,
Yeah, I think you saw that.
page 3.
Yeah, I think we'll.
I haven't had a chance to look over
Where's
this very much
Wasatch?
because we haven't seen
Exactly,
this.
yep.
I
Superintendent,
didn't know we
both,
had this in August.
Where is that at?
yeah.
Um,
Again, you can,
Conclusions, it talks about the Wasatch.
yeah,
Elementary.
you can tell you kind of used the we had,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
we
they
had
can kind
highlighted
of
that.
infill, this applies to this school, this applies to this school, that kind of
Sure.
thing. I get that.
Yeah, we definitely did. Circle that one as well.
Yeah, I
So
think that
what
was
will
a
be
really
done
good
with these
idea.
reports? I mean, is this something, obviously it's.
So it's public record.
Public-
We can look at, there was some, for example, in gymnasiums, there was some, soundproofing, that possibly could help. The major SIP projects we just finished and approved, but, sound panels, those might be, something we can look at it too. It'd be kind of, that we'll look at this and see, what we can do to, any improvements, for the learner's experience and so forth. Obviously, something major wouldn't happen this time.
So the ADA issues at Washington, is that because we've been grandfathered in? That
Correct.
those requirements are not there? So how do we address that?
It's at Highland
Is
too.
it a
Bathrooms.
case-by-case basis?
It's at Highland too. Bathrooms,
It doesn't change anything
gym.
once you start a new project, and then you have to meet ADA codes of this year.
but we are
That is
still
correct.
subject to litigation because it's a civil
That is
rights
correct.
issue. Or according to what
Yeah.
they said.
And that is your pinpointing the challenge. Absolutely, that's the heart of the matter. I don't know exactly what to say. I mean, you feel me? I'd love to. If it was an easy, a door opener or a ramp replacing some stairs, I think we could do that. It's harder inside the bathrooms because, again, if you're expanding a bathroom, you're taking it from a classroom or a closet or something like
Yeah,
that.
it talks about Highland,
so-
how, the additions were like made in such a way that you can't fix things.
Sure, and that's
you know,
any
and
remodel,
Decreasing
right?
daylight and.
Absolutely, and that's,
like that.
begs a question, so when we finally get to a point where we can fix Highland, are those kinds of code requirements, particularly with the ADA stuff, we're gonna have for the entire school?
Yes,
Not
it
just
has,
the
it
addition?
has to apply to the whole school, because if you have done a project over, what is it, 20%? What is it, what is the number? If you do a
Yeah.
project over a certain amount of money or square footage, you have, the whole rest of the structure has to meet.
and that's,
all code
and that's what we did for fire, because you could.
But it's all code
Yeah,
requirements.
code requirements, that's what we did with fire, all of Highland is now sprinklered with wet and dry systems. And that was, that the insurance paid for, to be able to do that. It just comes down to priorities. And what's best for those students that go to these individual elementary schools and, from the district, because if we, you know, do this elementary, might be one or two that, you know, that we can't do, or at least it will be put down the road.
So if a child in a wheelchair is in the neighborhood of Washington Elementary,
They have to go somewhere
they have to
else.
go somewhere
They
else.
would be,
Yeah, the district would provide transportation for an alternative site that's ADA accessible.
yep, and that's, yes. So I guess I'll finish, at least I'll say, we do the very best we can with the resources that we have been given, right? Because none of us were around when Washington was built.
So the
Pretty sure.
follow-on question that I have.
Yes,
with
please.
Highland, so the bids that we've got on the remodel and fixing Highland, has that included whatever else needs to happen throughout the rest of the school with respect to ADA requirements?
So I will verify that, but I'm fairly confident that say yes, that will
Not
happen.
just the rebuilt part? but
Correct.
wherever
Now,
else there
will
are-
that mean that every bathroom is ADA compliant? No.
Right.
But there will be some ADA bathrooms that will be accessible.
Accessible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would have liked to see this report earlier. I'm just gonna say that.
Okay.
If we've had this since August and we're only now seeing it, I'm very disappointed in that.
Okay,
But I'm just,
Sure.
just so you, just
Okay.
FYI,
okay,
so.
okay.
Highland update.
Yes. That's, again, and this would be more, I'll turn that over time to the board. Again, we've met last week with our architect and general contractor, Bateman Hall and Design West. And so you were able to ask some, you know, questions and so forth. And so I think this is our time to kind of discuss things you've learned, provide any directions and so forth.
At least for me, it was interesting to hear from them on what it would take if we were to just use the insurance money, that because of code changes and code requirements, the footprint to meet those needs will
Gonna be
diminish the
bigger.
size of the other, I mean, it's gonna take more of a footprint.
It'd be
than
a
what
smaller
was-
gym,
Right.
smaller
Well,
areas like
no,
that.
that's- were
They
saying
make it,
because of
it'll
the
be
code,
bigger.
It would require a bigger gym, but where are you going to take that space?
Well, in
from?
our meeting, it said you'd have to take it out of places like the gym because there aren't requirements for a space like that. That's what they said when I was meeting with them.
And again, we have not, I will update everybody there, we have not been able to talk to insurance about some of their questions. I still have those right on my board there. I have yours, Ms. Judy, as well, some insurance requirements that you're in questions as well.
Because I won't be able to be there for that meeting on,
Oh,
but
okay.
I would,
We'll definitely provide the questions to you, the answers that you, or, excuse me, the answers to the questions that you'd asked us
okay,
before that
thank
time.
you. So did everybody, I would like to say something as well, but I don't want to.
Please use your mic as
I don't
well.
want anybody else to feel like they haven't had a sufficient opportunity to make a comment. I didn't get to really ask a lot of the questions I had because I was too busy dealing with all the questions from the staff, from, administration. But one suggestion I would like in the black and white floor plan of this is, this would have been very, very helpful in talking about the bond, in talking about our options, having this information, because it talks about a lot of the inadequate areas and inadequate things in this, in the school, and what, so then it would help us when we're making a design, how would we want to maybe compensate for inadequacies that are in this facility in the new design so that we don't have that same issue, like no daylight areas, lots of no natural light areas, classrooms, things like that. So one suggestion that I made is that instead of sandwiching the commons cafeteria in the middle, I think it should be right in front of the gym so that we have natural light and we're not making more hallways that Highland already has enough of. So that's one suggestion that I had, is to put it there so that we have windows. We have windows into the common, not just skylights like in the media center. In the media center, there are skylights, but no windows. And there are no windows in a lot of the classrooms at Highland. So the experience, the learning experience is lots of no natural light. And when they built like the addition of the gym, instead of doing an entryway like Pocatello High School with the beautiful glass, it looks like Blackfoot South. It's cinder block all the way up to the top with this teeny little window at the top, which is exactly what that looks like. So, I mean, just so that we look at the mistakes that have been made, and then we look at that and say, okay, so how can we kind of compensate for maybe possibly, if I can say, mistakes that have been made, or maybe not some really forethought, where instead of that hallway being like that, if it was maybe a little bit more forethought, it could have opened into that grassy commons. I mean, maybe some forethought like that. So that's all that I would say, and the only other thing that I didn't really get a chance to ask very many questions about is, if we do change that over to here, I still have a lot of questions about this design. Putting the auditorium on a postage stamp, where we have inadequate, exits and, and if we have the land across the street, that might be a better place for it. But I didn't really get a chance to talk to them much about it, so we don't need to talk about that right now. But I guess really just the only thing that I would say right now is I would like to see this at the front so that when you walk up to the building, you have a beautiful entryway. Highland has enough brick walls to walk up to. You walk up to brick walls on all sides. There isn't an entry, which was also detailed in this architect, how did they say it in a nice way? I'm not gonna be able to find it. Basically, just the presence, the curbside, I guess you'd call it curbside appeal, is lacking. It said, I can't remember how they said it. That's how I guess I would say it, is that there isn't curbside appeal, that, for such a large, what do they call it? Civic structure. For such a large civic structure, there isn't, an entry. Where it says it under, entries, right there. There are two main entries in the front, anyway, to,
Deanna, I agree with you. I think that's all great. I think
a greater presence for this
Yeah,
major
I
civic
think,
structure.
though,
That's
that-
what they called it.
we can't really make those decisions until either the bond is passed or isn't passed.
So I'm not talking about making decisions as far as exactly how to build it. I'm talking about just the black lines. I'm not talking about making a plan. And the one thing the designer said is that's not a problem to change that over to there and that wouldn't cost money. It wouldn't be a problem to change the cafeteria commons to that side only to do that. So I guess that's all we really need to talk about, I guess, if everybody else wants to do that.
And Ms. Judy,
Talk
again,
about
you're
what?
talking about the cafeteria being on the
South side.
south side.
Yep, so it's a commons cafeteria where you walk into the building, into an open space, instead of walking into the building to a hallway on both sides. So both public entrances in this design, you're walking into a hallway. But I would like it so that you walk into a commons like Century or like Pokey or, just areas where your public entrance is a little bit, not just a hallway.
Sure.
So that's the only suggestion that I guess we could potentially make right now. Anyway, so is that something that you guys would be okay with doing, is just moving just this place to this place? And
I guess I'm not thinking that we are at that point where we're.
I'm not really talking about that. I'm just talking about, is that okay?
I mean, I think that will come up when we start getting fine tuning on the designs. I just don't think we're.
I'm getting asked questions. Why did you do it this way? I'm like, I didn't do it that way. I didn't choose this
Well, it's
design.
just a preliminary.
I get that, but most
Planned.
people don't understand that. And I don't either. I'm like, I don't understand why we would have a preliminary plan like this.
Well, I think we,
Give people the idea of what the potential is, of what can be done, and then the fine tuning. I mean, I agree, there's stuff in this report, I mean, it's not very complimentary of Highland at all. I mean, but I don't think that's anything, you know, anyone
not
in this room
anything
had any
new.
part of the original design and the architecture,
Right.
and that's, and the aesthetics of
Right.
it, it is what it is. And I think the intent long-term is that we need to get the bond passed, we need to get, and then we can really fine tune. I totally agree, I think that's a great idea to make more of that atrium. I guess I just haven't spent a lot of time on those kind of details yet.
Mhm.
We know we need a gym, we know we need the auditorium, we know we need the band and choir, and we know we need a cafeteria, and how those pieces, I'm gonna defer to the architects for that.
And he
But then-
said that
but
he
then
would be fine with that.
Yeah, so I think that's, hearing that rationale of why you think it needs to be moved, you're
Okay.
right, I agree. I think
Okay,
there's
what about you guys? Do you guys
opportunities to
think it's okay?
Have those discussions, I just don't know if we're there yet.
Are you guys okay with that? Are you okay with that?
Well, it's okay to think about that. I think, like Heather says, though, I think, you know, once we get the bond passed, then we can make all the final decisions of what we really want and talk about what's good for where and, you know, how it's gonna work the most effective and look the best and, you know, and what's best for the kids.
I'm convinced we will make, if and when the bond passes, I mean, I guess that's also part of it, is I haven't wanted to get too,
Stuck on an
too
idea.
committed to a certain design, because if the bond
Exactly,
doesn't
because I don't
pass,
want to get committed to this design.
there's gonna be a lot of
Well, we
heartache.
don't have to be committed to design right now.
Right,
Mhm.
that's what I'm.
And the other thing too is if the bond doesn't pass, we won't even still be designing yet, but this, it would need to be over there. The auditorium would just not be built because we have to move forward with the school for the kids.
I mean, we haven't even voted on doing the bond, so I think.
No, I'm
that's-
saying, no, I'm saying if we did do the bond and it does not pass,
Oh, yeah.
then we
No,
cannot do the auditorium. That's what I'm saying, is if that bond goes and it doesn't pass, then, yeah.
So the one things we know for sure, again, that there will be design phase. It will be probably 7 to 8 months, and definitely the board will be involved in that. You'll see preliminary sketches.
I'd like teacher and parent. input.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. We'll
I
have
mean, I think
staff, parent,
We've got a
teacher.
long way to go
And that's
before
part of
it's
that,
like-
they call it programming. Literally, they'll take these inputs and put them into the design. Natural light will be included in all of that. In any, and they will design it. We have to build it back.
Okay.
So I guess we need to know what to tell Design West. I mean, is it okay if black line, we put it over there or not? Because as of right now, he said, yep, I can do that.
We don't have,
So-
we don't have the money right now to even.
No.
To do anything.
I said it doesn't cost any money.
No, I understand that, but I don't think the. intent
No,
is
so
to
I'm
have
just
them
talking
doing
about
work.
him.
As soon as we're ready to put out a new design, and again, that discussion will come with the bond, then I think, yeah, definitely we'll have another brief conversation. Okay, what do we need to?
Oh, yeah.
How do we need to say that? But again, I think it's a little bit preliminary until we're ready to show
Send out
a new
all
drawing.
information.
Correct.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but excellent, good thoughts, for sure.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Okay, next, Dr. Hell will present the following topics: proposed policy revision and deletions, the proposed 2023-2024 school board meeting schedule, and the overall overview of a board recognitions and protocol for the elections of board officers. Dr. Hell.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First up, procedure 7305 is substitute teacher compensation, and a proposed revision there would be to move that from $10 to $20. And that's just really in keeping up with some of the other changes that we made recently to salary and compensation. And so that's the first one up there. Next up is policy 7503. This would be for deletion, and you'll pick it up certainly next month. But as you look through that policy, through the redlining, you can see that in 1973, someone thought it a good idea that every few years that a district office administrator could take off some time and be compensated for that. We have opportunities for leave, but, that would be at rather than the superintendent's determination. They could just take that unpaid. And so I'm not sure the origin of this, but as Ms. Johnson was reviewing it, we just thought, boy, that's one that hasn't really been applicable. And I don't know if it's necessary and why it would be up to the district to provide that professional development opportunity. Okay, so I'll let you take a look at that one before next week. And
Anybody use this recently? I mean, when's?
I think in 1973.
yeah,
Or did teachers even know this existed?
oh goodness,
It's administrators.
Oh, I see.
yeah, 12-month
Oh, the
certificated
12
staff.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay, and the other is 8510 on gifts. We already have this written into another policy, and it's up to $50. And so this conflicts with that. And so we're just going to ask to have that policy deleted too.
So you can only do up to $50? You can't just buy a set of, like, a series of books or anything
Oh,
like
that would
for
come
a
through,
classroom?
yeah, like Education Foundation or a donation to the
Well, I just mean to
district.
give to a teacher for their classroom. You can't do that?
Right. So the better way would be the alternative, would be through Ed Foundation.
Like a classroom donation and not just like a gift to a teacher.
Yeah, right, yeah. And then the tax savings would come into play too, if you were looking at that kind of purchase, I would think. Okay, so those are the three that we'll touch on again. As you can see under G, we have proposed school board meeting schedules. And here's the calendar. We talked a little bit, I think, at our December meeting about a conflict with school visits. And so whether we need to make that standard or whether we just work with individual board members. Standardization does help our schools to an extent. And so if we were to say, okay, Tuesday morning doesn't work, but maybe a Thursday afternoon does, if we could look at it to be more uniform, that would be great. And then if there are exceptions after that, that would be fine. And anything else that you'll want to talk about next week as we talk about the organization of the board itself as well as other meetings. You can see too that because of our ISBA training schedule, typically in February, June, and October, we take those months off of, work sessions even through the summer. And so, but then in February and October, we also have the ISBA trainings, so.
So the one thing that, at least, just speaking for myself, because most of the board work tends to be on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, where I struggled is when I had a morning thing.
And then afternoon as well.
You know, and
Okay.
so for me, Tuesdays, it would be nice to move it to Thursday,
Okay,
and I don't, that's just for me, but then I also now have a conflict every Tuesday morning anyway, so,
okay.
that's my situation.
All right, and as I mentioned, if we just want to say Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon, just to put some uniformity to it, but if we want to work individually with your schedules, we could do that as well. As long as we
I
have enough
can't
time up
currently
front.
do- Yeah, I can't currently do any Thursdays
Okay,
until after 2:30,
okay,
and I don't think that would really
right.
be
And, you
very
know, we
helpful, so, but-
Yeah, in our elementaries, not at all, really.
yeah,
10 minutes maybe for a couple of them, but,
yeah, yeah. so
okay,
However you want to do that is fine. I mean, I know we'd have to have flexibility anyway with both the principal's schedule and our schedules.
mhm.
But,
Yeah, so if you'll think about
We
that,
moved it to Wednesday. I mean,
that's a morning and an afternoon meeting.
okay,
well, but it doesn't.
and maybe if
say
we pick the
Wednesday,
dates.
Alternative.
Wednesday of the disciplinary.
Yes, that's what I was
Okay.
kind of
I
thinking.
can't do any mornings, so it would have.
No
to be
morning,
afternoon,
okay, yeah,
'cause
okay.
they work those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
okay. So maybe what we could do is have you send Renee your schedules of what does work. And then we could maybe tailor a couple of you to a day, and if we get that information out to the principals early enough, then they can make their arrangements. The reason we went with 9 o'clock originally was because it would allow us time, in fact, we'd even started earlier at one point, because the previous boards had suggested, well, we'd like to get in there and talk to some staff members. Well, you can't really do that while there are learners there. And so that's why we opted for the morning, and then it got pushed back for whatever reason. And so we can accommodate your schedules, and that's what we want to do. And then our buildings and principals will be flexible to your schedules. Okay? All right. So if you'll give Renee maybe 2 preferred times, let's say it that way. Okay?
Okay.
Time with a date or day of the week. Yeah. And maybe it's the same day and 2 different times, morning and afternoon or whatever it happens to be. Okay. That'll be great. Okay, and then finally, you can see under item H is the organization and governance of the board. And in the latter part of that document, it talks about offices. And then the other document in this section is the protocol for election of board officers. And this is coming up next week. And I know Mr. Knopf had a chance to, boy, he's been involved. We've had him out at PV Tech. We've had him at Highland High School, I think, yesterday. And then brought him in for one of those individual meetings with the design team and construction manager group. And so I think Ms. Clark mentioned drinking from a fire hose. You come in mid-year, that's what it feels like. And so even with that, here's the protocol for election of officers. And so at every meeting, we do that reorganization or organization. And so the current chair will hand me the gavel. I'll call for nominations and then just outline the criteria. And then it looks like there are 5 bullet points there. And then once we elect the chair, then I return the gavel to the chair, and then they take care of the rest of the offices. And so that's coming up for you next week. All right? Exciting times. Anything else? Those are my, I think, 3 or 4 items that I had for you tonight.
Okay. Next on the agenda is public and written comment. I have no written comment and no public comment, so that concludes this meeting. I declare us adjourned.